Hello, everybody. This is Ryan from My Try Running Programs. This is my second weekly update of the Higdon Advanced One Marathon Training Program. And this week, I'll probably keep my update a little bit shorter. There's really only two major workouts that you'll see in the program, and that's the 30-minute tempo run that I did on the fourth day and the 11-mile long run on the Sunday, or really the Saturday when I run my long runs. So with that in mind, something that also is somewhat relevant to my running training and that I'm going to try to keep everybody updated on as I continue to make these videos is where kind of the body composition is coming along, because I view that as a great adjunct to my running training is the actual fat loss that I'm doing. So last week I was at 188 pounds and 17% body fat according to the Navy body fat scale. This week I measured in at 186 pounds and a 10% body fat percentage according to the Navy scale. Naturally, there's no way I lost 7% body fat in 1 week. Very likely I was carrying some extra water weight last week and probably lost about a pound or so of weight this week. So probably really in the 13 to 14% range in terms of body fat. I'm certainly looking leaner in the mirror, which is fantastic. That's always a positive. But I think it's also definitely impacting my running, and that will show, I think, as I go through some of the runs this week. So with that in mind, overall, a pretty easy week, hit all the runs pretty well. You can see it totaled up to roughly around 31 miles. I will say that with the caveat that I do tend to have one run from the subsequent upcoming week kind of fall into my training program, so it can make the mileage seem a little more inflated than it is. So that's always something to keep in the back of your mind. The first three runs of the week, I'm not going to talk too much about. All done at a relatively easy pace. The first one was a 3-mile run, did it slightly under 8-minute pace, about 160-ish on average BPM. Similarly, my second easy run was a 5-mile run, done slightly under 8-minute pace. Also a little bit lower in the BPM, which I think is fantastic, was much more comfortable, nice, easy run. And that actually did tend to be the same thing with my next 3-mile run. I was able to keep them all very, very easy, which is the goal that Hal really tells you to do is, try to stay a minute and a half, maybe even 2 minutes below your race pace. So I could really even go slower if I wanted to, but for the sake of time, I try to move as quickly as I can so I can get to work on time and not hold my wife up from her work schedule as well. So the fourth run of the week is a 30-minute tempo run. And this is really worth diving into a little bit deeper since it's a more serious workout. For me, that ended up being a 4.25 mile. For you, depending on your overall race pace and goals, that would be different. This is not a set mileage run, it's a set minute run. And so ultimately I ran a little above 30 minutes just to make up for some time spent waiting at the stoplight that kind of breaks up the two chunks of my run. And that ended up being about a 7-minute per mile pace, a little bit above 7 minutes per mile pace. I ran it on a relatively flat area just so that I could get as much work in as possible and not be kind of overly confusing myself and my body by trying to figure out gap paces, running up hills, things of that nature, which makes it overall pretty easy, and it's just an out and back style. So the great thing about this run is that it ended up being probably pretty quick for me. Hal would recommend that it be at your 10K race pace. And I think right about now, I could probably run a 10K at about 6:30 on average. So that's fantastic. And you can see, according to Strava, that ended up being my second best estimated 2-mile and 1-mile efforts, and also my third best 5K effort, which admittedly, my 5K is pretty soft. It's not a race that I run particularly often, nor do I train for. So with that in mind, you can see that because I ran it in an 8-minute easy, 12 minutes tempo, and then 10 minutes easy, or really 12 minutes like hard, that ended up breaking out to my first mile being kind of comfortable at the 7:30 minute pace, then running 2 miles in the mid-6 range, and then a couple of cool down, well, 1.25 miles of cool down, averaging out at about 7:30 as well. I didn't have my BPMs for this because my Fitbit watch has just been difficult to deal with. It doesn't always want to turn its screen on. So I was using the Strava app here, and you can see just basically based on how it was tracking my pacing, really where I did the tempo. And all of the tempo work is right in here from about 9 minutes to a little bit after about 21-ish minutes. The thing that I found interesting was really you can see a big chunk of this actually ended up becoming sub 5 in certain areas, or very, very low 6s. And then this must have been a little bit off because I don't remember all out like sprinting at above about the 520-ish per minute pace. So I think the Strava app got a little excited there. I do believe I kept most of this effort pretty comfortably in about the 620 to 640 range that I was running it. So this was a fantastic, fantastic workout that points to there is some underlying speed that I have. The issue is I have to kind of churn it out of me because I don't really do speed work. This entire year has been a mixture of easy and long runs for me. I've basically been base building until August, from January through August. So it was good to see that there is some top end speed there that can be developed and improved. And overall hit the workout just is how I would describe it. For the 30-minute tempo runs, he says that you can do like 10 minutes easy, 10 minutes hard, 10 minutes easy, but you can break it up however you really want. He doesn't mind, just so long as that there is a front end of easy work and a back end of some easy work followed, or in between being more of that tempo-y 10K type race pace effort. So the other one that I'd like to report on this week would be the long run of the week, which is an 11-mile run as prescribed by Hal, and ended up being about an 8:19 per mile pace. So overall was much faster than last week's long run, and it's surprisingly actually much comfier. You'll see that my beat per minutes were controlled very, very well. I moved this in front of the 5-mile run that is normally prescribed on this day because my wife was off work, so it was a little bit easier for my schedule to fit it in. The only thing that I would say that went poorly on this run is I came out a little bit faster than I would have wanted to. I probably would have wanted to run all of these miles above 8 minutes per mile. So the first two came out 740 in the first one and 754 in the second one. The second mile, that's not as big of a deal because that is going into a slight downhill. So that mile might always end up being faster since I'll use some variation of this course every single week. But by and large, a very controlled effort. What I found really interesting is that I believe out of all of my runs this week, this was actually the lowest in a beats per minute perspective. So it was very, very controlled. Now, that might also be a little artificially deflated because there's a lot of stoplights on this run. But by and large, it was a much more controlled effort. When you look at this pace and you see how relatively flat it is, that's a really good sign that you found the right pace that you wanted to on a nice, easy long run. And in comparison, in this upcoming week, in week 3, you'll see that I'll do my first 3-1 long run where you do some hard work at the end of the long run. And so it'll be interesting to see how that compares. But by and large, a very successful long run for that 11-mile distance. And then to close out the week was an easy, pretty relatively easy run, 5 miles at about 8 minutes per mile pace. Nothing too crazy to report on this run. Went pretty well. BPM, once again, was kind of interesting, a little bit higher than my long run, but overall, a pretty easy run. And overall, a pretty good week for the training program. It will be interesting to see how it cycles into the third week. I'm roughly 2/3 of the way done with the third week, and things are going well. But there are a couple more workouts that I haven't run yet, so we'll see how that ends up comparing. But based on how the plan's written, this is how I would have wanted to run it this week. So very, very happy with that. We'll see how it leads into week 3, but I'll keep you all updated as I go. So take care, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the third week.